Why would a scroll sealed 5 centuries before Rome fell describe, in unsettling detail, the downfall of an empire that did not yet exist? Why were its last lines scratched out violently, as if someone feared what the prophecy would reveal next? Our story begins not in Rome, but beneath it. In the summer of 1843, workers clearing rubble under the ancient tabularium stumbled upon a stone chamber untouched since antiquity. Inside lay a bronze coffer wrapped in layers of waxed linen. When the archaeologists opened it, they found something extraordinary. A scroll written in a dialect older than classical Latin, a script scholars recognized but could barely translate. The author called himself a traveler from the first fire, and what he described would shake the foundations of Roman history. The scroll claimed that Rome's destruction would not come from foreign enemies, famine, or plague, but from something far more insidious. The empire would collapse the moment it forgot why it existed. The opening lines read, "When iron outgrows duty, when wealth outgrows virtue, when law outgrows justice, the empire of the wolf shall devour itself." No one could explain how a text dated to circa 300 BC, long before Rome became a global power, spoke of an empire of the wolf, the very symbol of Roman identity. The scroll was sent to the Vatican for preservation and then quietly locked away. But this story is not about the scroll's discovery. It is about the first man in history who read it and tried to bury its message forever. His name was Gnaeus Marcius Attilius, a Roman magistrate of the 2nd century BCE, a man of reputation, a man of order, a man who feared that the knowledge inside the scroll could tear Rome apart long before any prophecy could. Attilius recorded his experience in his private diary. The first entry is short. "I have read a thing Rome must never know." What did he see? What truth was so dangerous that he believed it could destroy the Republic? To understand that, we must travel back to Rome, 148 BCE, when a much younger Rome, ambitious, confident, unbreakable, stood on the edge of a transformation no citizen could recognize, except the man who held the forbidden scroll. Attilius was present when the scroll was originally uncovered, not in 1843, but when the same chamber was opened over 2,000 years earlier. Historians long believed it collapsed during an earthquake. In reality, it was sealed deliberately, and the reason for this secrecy would soon pull Attilius into a web of prophecy, fear, and political betrayal. He was summoned to interpret the text because he possessed rare knowledge of archaic dialects preserved by his family. But decoding the scroll was not the challenge. Accepting what it foretold was. For the scroll did not simply predict Rome's fall. It predicted how each stage of decline would unfold. The first sign, it claimed, would be when the sons of wolves sell their brothers for grain. Attilius believed he understood this immediately. Rome's growing hunger for conquest was already turning citizens against one another, with political factions buying loyalty through corruption and bribery. The second sign read, "When the voice of the people becomes the voice of hunger, not of reason." And here Rome already stood at the edge. Food riots, land disputes, political demagogues manipulating the masses. But the third sign was the one that rattled Attilius to the core. When Rome's protectors become Rome's masters. No one knew yet that within generations, powerful generals, Marius, Sulla, Pompey, Caesar, would reshape the Republic into a battleground of ambition. To Attilius, it was as if the scroll saw centuries into the future. But the prophecy held something even more disturbing. A final passage so dark he hid it from the Senate, fearing what might happen if Rome believed the prophecy irresistible. Yet someone discovered he was withholding information, and they were willing to kill him for the missing piece. As Attilius left the Senate chambers one evening, a shadow approached him and whispered, "The scroll speaks of a fourth sign, and we want to know it." Before Attilius could react, a blade flashed in the lamplight. The dagger never reached Attilius's throat. A guard's torch flared at the end of the corridor, and the would-be assassin slipped back into the darkness like a phantom. But the message was clear. Someone inside Rome's political heart already knew he was hiding the scroll's final warning. Attilius returned home shaken. His villa on the Aventine Hill overlooked the restless city below, vendors shouting, slaves rushing, magistrates arguing over land reforms. Rome hummed with ambition and anxiety, as if the entire republic were standing on a tightrope it refused to acknowledge. He locked himself inside his private study and unrolled the ancient scroll again, forcing himself to read the final lines he had been too afraid to share with the Senate. The fourth sign, the one Rome must never hear, read, "When the empire bows to a single man dressed in purple, the wolf shall eat its own heart." Attilius froze. Rome had no emperors yet. The idea of a single ruler was unthinkable, almost offensive to the republican spirit. But the scroll spoke of such a man, a ruler who would rise from chaos, crowned not by divine right, but by Rome's own desperation. The prophecy was clear. Rome's downfall would come from within, birthed by the very people who believed they were saving it. Attilius understood the danger. If this prophecy spread, Rome might hasten its own doom, either through paranoia or through the rise of those who believed themselves destined to fulfill it. And yet, someone wanted this final sign exposed. Was it a rival magistrate? A religious faction? A foreign agent? Or something far older? An order sworn to preserve the scroll's warning at any cost? Attilius kept the scroll hidden beneath his floor tiles, wrapped in goat skin, protected from humidity and prying eyes. He wrote a single phrase in his diary: "Knowledge itself is the weapon that will end us." 2 nights later, as the moon cast pale light across the forum, Attilius was approached by an elderly priest of Vesta, trembling as he spoke. "The scroll you hide," the priest whispered, "is not the first of its kind." Attilius felt a chill. "Explain." "There were 9 such prophecies," the priest continued. "The ancients called them the fires of origin. 7 were lost before Rome was even a village of shepherds. Only 2 survived long enough to be read by the Sibylline keepers." Attilius knew the name well. The Sibylline books, mystical writings consulted in times of national emergency, were guarded with near religious devotion. But this priest spoke of something older than the Sibylline tradition, older than Rome itself. "The prophecy you read," the priest insisted, "was never meant for human eyes. It belongs to the keepers alone." Attilius felt the ground shift beneath him. "Then why bring it to me?" "Because the keepers are divided," the priest whispered. "Some would destroy the scroll. Others would use it to control Rome. And a few believe it foretells a fate we cannot escape." Before Attilius could ask more, the priest pressed a wax seal into his hand, a symbol depicting a burning wolf. "Go to the sanctuary of Cumae," the priest said. "Someone waits for you." And then he vanished into the night. Leaving Rome meant risking everything. Attilius was a magistrate. Abandoning his duties could be seen as treason. But the scroll's warning echoed through his mind. If others were fighting over its meaning, he needed answers before Rome spiraled further into chaos. He disguised himself in a traveler's cloak and slipped out of the city at dawn, taking the coastal road toward Cumae, a place whispered about even in the Senate. It was in Cumae's caves that the Sibyl once prophesied to Aeneas, foretelling Rome's eventual rise. Now Attilius wondered if its mysteries hid something far darker. 3 days into his journey, he realized he was being followed. At first, he noticed footsteps behind him on the rocky path, then shadows near his campfire that vanished when he approached. On the 4th night, as he crossed a narrow bridge, someone called his name. "Attilius." He spun around. A hooded figure stood at the far end of the bridge. "You cannot hide what you carry," the voice said. "The scroll belongs to those who understand its purpose." "Who are you?" Attilius demanded. The figure lifted a hand, revealing the same burning wolf sigil the priest had given him. "I am one of the custodes ignum," the man said. "The keepers of the first fire. And you have something we need returned." Attilius backed away. "You want to suppress the prophecy?" "No," the man replied. "We want to complete it." Attilius's breath caught. "Complete? What do you mean?" "The scroll you have is only half. The second half lies where Rome was born. And together, they reveal the true architect of Rome's fall." Attilius stared in horror. "There is more? Another prophecy?" The keeper nodded. And if you continue toward Kyumi, you will meet the one person who knows why the prophecy was written in the first place. Attilius gripped the bridge rail. Why warn me? Because, the keeper said softly, others are on their way, and they do not want you alive. Before Attilius could speak, a whistle cut through the night. The keeper stiffened, eyes widening. They found us. He shoved Attilius aside, just as arrows hissed through the air. The bridge exploded into chaos. And Attilius realized something chilling. This was no longer about a scroll. This was about a secret Rome had been killing to protect for centuries. Arrows thudded into the wooden planks as Attilius threw himself onto the ground. The hooded keeper beside him staggered, an arrow lodged in his shoulder, but he did not fall. Instead, he pushed Attilius toward the far end of the bridge. Run, he hissed. If they take you, the prophecy becomes their weapon. Attilius didn't look back. He sprinted across the bridge as more arrows sliced through the air. The attackers, 3 shadowy figures, emerged from the trees, moving with military precision. Not assassins, not bandits. These were trained soldiers. When Attilius reached the dirt road, he turned just long enough to see the wounded keeper slam a torch into the wooden ropes. Flames erupted. The bridge collapsed into the ravine below, carrying him and the attackers with it. The sound of splintering wood echoed in the valley. The keeper was gone, but his final words clung to Attilius's thoughts. The prophecy is only half. Attilius reached Kyumi by midday the next afternoon, exhausted, wounded, and deeply aware he was no longer a mere magistrate carrying a secret. He was now the last person alive who knew the full danger of the prophecy's 4th sign. The sanctuary of Kyumi was carved into limestone cliffs overlooking the sea. Its entrance was guarded not by soldiers, but by silence, a sacred, heavy silence that felt older than Rome itself. Inside, the air was cool and thick with the smell of ancient stone. Torches flickered along the walls, illuminating carvings of serpents, wolves, and geometric symbols. Attilius felt a weight press against him, as if the cave were judging his presence. From deeper inside, a voice spoke. You carry a scroll that was meant for no ruler and no senate. Attilius stepped forward and saw a woman seated upon a stone bench, her hair bound with simple cloth, her expression calm, yet unreadable. I am Livia Celestis, she said, last interpreter of the Kymian line, heir to the traditions of the ancient Sibyl. Attilius bowed cautiously. You know of the scroll? It was written here, Livia replied. Not by men. Not entirely. Attilius's pulse quickened. Then you know what it predicts? Livia nodded. And you have only read the warnings. Not the origin. She motioned for him to sit beside a carved basin. On the wall above it, a mural depicted a city built upon 7 hills, Rome, and above it, a burning wolf consuming its own tail. Attilius whispered, the 4th sign, the rise of one ruler, the end of the Republic. No, Livia said gently. That is not the 4th sign. That is merely the consequence. Attilius stared. The scroll said, the scroll you have, Livia interrupted, was edited. Attilius froze. Only fragments remain from the original prophecy, she continued. Pieces preserved selectively by generations who feared what the full truth meant. Why would they alter it? Attilius demanded. Because the complete prophecy does not predict Rome's fall. She leaned closer. It explains why Rome existed at all. Livia lifted a stone slab from the basin, revealing a second chamber. Inside lay fragments of papyrus, bone-dry and nearly disintegrated. These, she whispered, are from the missing half. Attilius's chest tightened. For centuries, Rome believed the Sibylline books were the closest thing to divine instruction. But before the Sibyl, before any temple, there had been something else, something older and less forgiving. He leaned in, reading the faint text. From the ashes of the first fire shall rise a people carved of discipline, born for conquest, destined to fracture the age of kings. This was not a prediction. This was a mandate. The first fire? Attilius asked. Livia nodded. The ancient tribes believed the world began with a great ignition, the first fire, that burned away chaos and left order behind. The prophecy claims Rome was chosen to restore that order. Attilius tried to steady his breathing. So Rome was not an accident of history. No, it was a correction. He stared into the fragments again. But where is the part about Rome's fall? Livia hesitated. That is why you are here. She handed him a final sliver of papyrus, the ink faint but legible. It read, "When the chosen cease to act as instruments of order, the fire shall abandon them. Their greatness collapses not from attack, but from emptiness. The wolf devours its heart because the heart no longer beats." Attilius felt the cave tilt. Rome's fall was not fated. Rome's fall was earned. Rome dies, Attilius whispered, not because others destroy it, but because it destroys its purpose. That is why the scroll was sealed, Livius said. Rome's early leaders feared that if the people knew their destiny depended on virtue, discipline, and balance, then Rome's decline would be blamed on those in power. Attilius looked up sharply, which means the prophecy was hidden to protect the rulers, not the people. Livia's eyes darkened. Worse, there are those who believe Rome should fall, so a new chosen people can rise in its place. Attilius stepped back. You mean the keepers? No, she said quietly. The keepers want balance. The ones hunting you belong to another order, one that believes the prophecy must be fulfilled, not prevented. Attilius felt a cold wave wash over him. Who are they? Livia extinguished the torch with a single breath. In the darkness, her voice echoed. They call themselves the Second Fire, and their leader sits in Rome right now. Attilius reached for his cloak. He had to return to Rome, immediately, but the prophecy had one final secret waiting for him. He just didn't know yet that Rome would never let him reach its gates alive. Attilius left the sanctuary of Cumae before sunrise, but he was not the same man who entered it. He now carried a truth Rome had buried for centuries, a truth that could either save the Republic or ignite the very collapse the prophecy warned of. The road back to Rome cut through cypress forests and quiet farmlands. Attilius rode fast, pushing his horse until its breath came in clouds. He had only one thought. Someone inside Rome wanted the prophecy fulfilled. Someone powerful. Someone with access to soldiers, spies, archives. Someone who sat at Rome's heart and whispered to its arteries. As the sun rose, Attilius saw the city's 7 hills appear on the horizon. But instead of relief, he felt dread. Standing atop the Aventine Hill, a man waited for him, calm, unarmed, hands folded behind his back. Marcus Fabius Lentulus, a senator, a philosopher, a man widely respected for his reforms, and the last person Attilius would ever suspect. Attilius slowed his horse. Fabius? What are you doing here? Waiting, Fabius said. You took longer than expected. Attilius's stomach tightened. It was you. You sent the assassins. No, I sent the first messenger. Fabius stepped forward. To warn you that others were hunting you. Those others were a useful test. Attilius's blood chilled. You're the leader of the Second Fire. Fabius smiled, not with pride, but with inevitability. The Republic is dying, Attilius. The prophecy simply describes what is already happening. Attilius dismounted. Rome is flawed, but not doomed. Fabius shook his head gently. Rome is a contradiction, built to restore order, yet consumed by corruption. Destined for virtue, yet addicted to conquest. The first fire chose Rome, yes, but Rome betrayed its purpose. He stepped closer, speaking with unnerving calm. Therefore, a second fire must rise. Attilius clenched his fists. You mean destruction? No, Fabius said softly. Rebirth. Attilius knew he needed to buy time. Explain yourself. You've read the missing half of the prophecy. Fabius nodded. I have. And unlike you, I understood it. He recited, when the chosen abandon order, a new chosen shall rise from their ashes. You think you are the new chosen? No, Fabius replied. Rome itself must burn so that something purer may replace it. The prophecy does not mourn Rome, it condemns it. Attilius was horrified. You want the prophecy fulfilled. You want Rome to collapse. Fabius smiled faintly. And it will. Look around you. Senators buying power. Generals claiming loyalty from their own legions. Grain prices rising. Slaves outnumbering citizens. Rome's heart has already stopped beating. Attilius. I am merely allowing the wolf to finish its meal. Attilius stepped back, gripping the scroll beneath his cloak. You think you can control collapse? I don't need to control it, Fabius said. I only need to guide it. Then his tone darkened. You were never meant to return from Cumae. Fabius lifted his hand. 4 armored soldiers emerged from the trees, encircling Attilius. But Attilius did not back down. He spoke loudly, clearly. I know the full prophecy now. Rome does not fall because it is weak. Rome falls because men like you believe destiny excuses treason. Fabius tilted his head. You misunderstand me. Treason is only treason when a state deserves loyalty. Does Rome deserve loyalty, Attilius? After everything it has become? Attilius's silence answered for him, and Fabius saw it. That is why the prophecy must come to pass, Fabius said quietly. Even you feel Rome's sickness. Attilius reached under his cloak. The soldiers tensed. He pulled out, not a weapon, but the scroll. The ancient parchment fluttered in the breeze like a dying flame. If you believe Rome should fall, Attilius said, then read the final lines again. He unrolled it and thrust it toward Fabius. The wolf devours its heart because the heart no longer beats. Attilius stepped closer. That is not a command. It is a warning. Rome falls only if we abandon what made it great. Fabius's eyes narrowed. You cannot stop what has already begun. He raised his hand. The soldiers took a step toward Attilius. Suddenly, a horn blared from the city walls. The soldiers froze. Fabius turned sharply. Attilius knew that sound. Every Roman did. It was the horn used only when the city itself was under threat. Fabius's calm finally cracked. That's impossible, he muttered. The legions are weeks away. Attilius knew the truth immediately. This was no foreign invasion. No enemy crossing the borders. This was internal. A rebellion. A fracture. Just as the prophecy described. Rome was devouring itself. Fabius whispered, almost reverently. It has begun. And for the first time, Attilius saw fear in the eyes of the man who wanted Rome to burn. But the prophecy had one final secret left. One last revelation Attilius had not yet uncovered. He just didn't know that the scroll he carried did not predict Rome's fall. It predicted his own. The warning horns from Rome echoed across the hills like a wounded animal. Smoke lifted somewhere beyond the Aventine, curling into the sky. Attilius stared toward the city, his city, as shouts and metal clashing began to rise from within the walls. Rome was not under attack. Rome was tearing itself apart, just as the prophecy had warned. But Attilius did not have time to mourn. Fabius stepped backward, eyes narrowed, calculating. This chaos, he whispered, is the fracture the second fire has prepared for. Rome will fall today, or it will fall tomorrow. But it will fall. Attilius gripped the scroll. No, he said. Not if the people know the truth. Fabius's soldiers surrounded him. The truth, Attilius, is the most dangerous weapon in Rome. That scroll, your scroll, does not save the Republic. It kills it. Attilius clenched his jaw. What are you talking about? Fabius spoke with the calm of a man certain of victory. You think the prophecy ends with the fourth sign, but you never found the last line. Attilius shook his head. There was nothing more. Fabius smiled coldly. That's because someone removed it before you were born. Attilius's pulse quickened. What last line? Fabius gestured to the scroll. Look at the very bottom. The torn edge. Ask yourself why it was torn, not worn by age, but deliberately removed. Attilius opened the scroll with trembling hands. He had seen that torn edge countless times, assuming decay had claimed whatever came after the fourth sign. But now, with Fabius's words echoing, he saw it differently. The edge was too clean, too sharp, too intentional. What did it say? Attilius asked, gripping the parchment. Fabius stepped closer, lowering his voice almost gently. It said the prophecy ends, not with Rome's fall, but with the death of the one who tries to prevent it. Attilius froze. That makes no. Fabius raised his hand. The soldiers drew their swords. The first fire knew that whoever held the full truth would try to change fate, Fabius said. And fate despises interference. Attilius backed away, clutching the scroll like a shield. No prophecy decides my death. Fabius's eyes softened with something resembling pity. It already has. Another alarm sounded from the city. Attilius could now see flames rising from the eastern district. Civilians fleeing. Soldiers fighting soldiers. The Republic cracking like pottery dropped from a great height. This was the moment the second fire had engineered. Chaos to scorch the foundations. Fire to burn the old world. Rebirth from ashes. Attilius turned, not to run, but to descend the hill toward Rome. If he could reach the Senate, he could reveal the missing fragments. Prove that Rome's fall was never destined, only chosen. He could stop the second fire. Stop Fabius. Stop the prophecy from becoming self-fulfilling. But Fabius understood immediately. You intend to warn them. Attilius didn't answer. Fabius sighed. You cannot save Rome, Attilius. Rome is already burning. And you, he nodded to his soldiers, must complete your part of the prophecy. The soldiers advanced. Attilius ran. Down the hill. Across the dust road. Toward the city whose fate now raged like an open wound. The soldiers pursued him relentlessly, closing distance with every stride. Attilius's lungs burned. His legs trembled. But he did not stop. Not until he reached the Servian wall. Ancient, cracked, but still towering. A wounded legionary staggered nearby, clutching his side. Sir, don't enter the city. They've turned on each off. Before he finished, an arrow struck him in the throat. Attilius ducked behind the wall as more arrows flew past. The soldiers were almost upon him. He clutched the scroll to his chest. I will not die because ink says I must, he whispered. He sprinted along the perimeter of the wall, searching desperately for an open gate. But the second fire had predicted that too. The soldiers cornered him beside a collapsed archway. Attilius raised the scroll defensively, as if the ancient words could shield him. Attilius, Fabius called from a distance. Do not make this uglier than it must be. Attilius shouted back. The prophecy never demanded Rome's fall. You twisted it. Fabius shook his head. I did nothing but accept the truth. You, however, he nodded. A soldier lunged. Attilius dodged. Another swung his blade. Attilius blocked it with the scroll, parchment ripping violently. He stumbled, fell to his knees. A sword lifted above him. Attilius gasped, but before the blade fell, everything stopped. The soldiers froze, staring at the scroll in shock. The torn parchment fluttered open, revealing something even Attilius never noticed. A second layer of ink. Faint. Older. Hidden beneath the first. The missing line. Attilius whispered the words aloud. When truth is cut, the one who carries it shall fall, but by his fall, Rome shall see. Attilius looked up at the soldiers. The prophecy had not said he would die. It said his fall would reveal the truth. He rose to his feet. The soldiers hesitated. Even Fabius faltered. Attilius, he warned. Attilius stepped backward and let himself fall from the crumbled arch down into the ditch below. A long drop. A brutal landing. Light exploded behind his eyes. He lay still. The scroll slipped from his fingers and rolled onto the open road, where dozens of fleeing Romans would soon find it and read the truth. Fabius stared down at the motionless body. A soldier asked, "Is he dead?" Fabius didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the scroll, now out of his reach, now exposed, now unstoppable. He whispered. The prophecy protected him. By nightfall, the scroll had passed through dozens of hands. Citizens, soldiers, senators. And as its words spread, something extraordinary happened. Fabius's rebellion fractured. Loyalty shifted. The second fire lost its momentum. Because Rome had finally seen what the prophecy truly said, its fall was never fate. It was a choice made every time Rome abandoned its principles. Attilius did not rise from the ditch. But he did not need to. His fall had saved the republic he loved. Not forever, not perfectly, but long enough for Rome to remember itself. Long enough to give history a different path. Long enough for truth to outlive prophecy.